Welcome, you guys. Bringing in this 2023 year of the, does anyone know? Rabbit. Everybody knows.
Yin Water Rabbit.
Yin Water, you got it. And what was last year?
Yang Water Tiger.
Yang Water Tiger, totally. So we're in a very different animal, the tiger versus the rabbit, right? The same element, water, but yin water and yang water are incredibly different. So even just thinking of yang water, the ocean or a rushing river, and the tiger, that's a pretty strong year, right? Yin water, like dew or mist, and a rabbit, you can already start to feel what this year is going to be like. And I am, for one, excited. I don't know about you guys. Yeah. Do we have any rabbits here? Yay! That's fun. My mom is a rabbit too. She'll be in a minute. But reading about the rabbit this year made me like really excited about all rabbits. So you're my new best friend. I'll reach you guys a little bit about rabbits. Do you guys know in general about the Chinese calendrical system and the 12 animals? Maybe you have seen that on Chinese placemats. So the year, as you're seeing, this is the start of the new year. Their new year begins on February 4th. So on the Chinese placemat, if you were born, January of some year, so if you were born January of this year, you're still a tiger. You're still a tiger if you were born yesterday. You're a rabbit. It's a brand new year today until February 4th of next year, if that makes sense. So is anybody a January birthday and all of a sudden they're a different animal than they ever thought? Because that's always oh my God. Okay, no one. Good. You've had a nice, stable life with your animal. So I'm going to read a little bit about rabbits. So the rabbit is a symbol of fertility, creation, healing, intuition, new life, diplomacy, tenderness, and compassion. So that's people born in this year, and that's also the qualities of this year. So your more creative, intuitive, compassionate, healing side is going to be more highlighted this year. So that art project you've been trying to do or dying to do, the Reiki you've been wanting to get trained in, this is the year for all of that stuff. The energy of this year is behind all of that, very much. Coming to the clinic to get good work, it's going to be triple-fold awesomeness. And then every energetic has an unbalanced side. So unbalanced side of people born in this year, the rabbit year, and also of this year, can be insecure, moody, overly sensitive, overly cautious. So if you feel any of that creeping on you this year, insecure, moody, oversensitive, overly cautious, then you're oh, it's still the energy of this year, but that's not the balanced version. So I'm going to go out and do some yoga and do some art and bring in the more positive, helpful attributes. Does that make sense? And then you kind of tip the scale back towards going with the flow of the stuff that's helpful. Directionally, all the animals have a different direction, north, south, east, west, center. The rabbit lives in the east. So the rabbit is the east part of the calendar. It's sunrise, it's the spring, it's the wood energy of the 5 elements. So it's things that have energy of growing up and out like a seed. The rabbit is the mansion of family and ancestors, past, present, and future. And in the highest form, the rabbit focuses on children, the future. So this may also naturally be a year where you feel more drawn to focus on family, and that's the family you're born with. That's maybe your karmic line, whatever, but the energy of this year also really supports that. So then all of that at the rabbit. Do we remember anything I just said that the rabbit entails? Can anybody shout? Olivia doesn't. Does anyone remember one thing they can say? Compassion, yeah. Healing, yeah. Creativity. If we had to pick 3, that would be kind of so that is this year, and then it's also the Yin Water year, so that is equally as strong. And weirdly, Yin Water has a lot of similarities, so it just strengthens all of that even more. So combined with the Yin Water, the rabbit and Yin Water, just provides great blessings for all of that. And the water and the element system, water supports the wood of the rabbit, just like you water a plant and it grows, like literally. Because it's a yin water year, it naturally grows all of that wood stuff that the rabbit has. And then it also really heightens the sensitivity and intuition of the rabbit. Like, so anybody born this year, they will be really gifted with that. And then we'll also just feel that a lot in the year. I have so much more to say, but do you want to say stuff? Because I've been talking a while.
No, yeah, go for it.
Oh, keep talking. Okay. So in the Chinese system, all the years go in 60-year cycles. So there's 60 individual combinations of these heavenly stems and earthly branches that make 60 unique years, and then it repeats again. So the last time this unique branch of Gui Mao, the Yin water, happened was 60 years ago. So I always think it's interesting to look back at 60 years ago to see what was up, you know, because maybe like some of that will show up this year because that's the same energetic pattern. Does anyone have a quick math as to 60 years ago?
63.
Our mathematicians. Does anyone remember something super big that happened that year? 63. Everyone is right. It is 63. Kennedy's assassination, totally. That was just interesting. I'll read some other things about 63. MLK, I have a dream speech. That was a goodie. That was definitely intuition, compassion, and then bringing that out into the world, right? JFK's assassination. The beginning of Beatlemania. Was anyone part of Beatlemania? I wish I was. Civil rights movement was very strong in 63. Just in terms of the world, postage was, guess how much postage was? Less.
7?
It was 4 and it went to 5 in 63. And zip codes were introduced. So there were no zip codes in 1962, if anyone was writing letters then. I love this. AT&T introduced the first touch-tone television. Pull tabs were introduced to soda cans. Like, you know, like what was it before? I don't know. Just the pop top? Yeah. And cassettes began in Europe, and we got them the next year in America. So our whole recording world changed. Born in 1963, so perhaps some of these people especially can show us some of the exemplary qualities of this yin water, Gui Mao year. Johnny Depp, Michael Jordan, Brad Pitt, Whitney Houston, Mike Myers, Helen Hunt, all pretty good ones. Let's see if I have more to say. And then, are you going to talk about Gui Mao? Yeah. Okay. I'll just say this last thing about this Gui Mao, which is the yin water. So it is a cosmological pattern that shows up on the earth and in the heavens, like some energetically, like I'm talking about, but also literally it tells us what kind of weather patterns are going to happen, what kind of grains grow well in this combination. Excuse me. So with yin water, this year there's supposed to be more dramatic weather, like excessive rainstorms or droughts or heat waves. Not that we need any more of that, but here it may be. And that's also saying it's been this way for this Gui Mao year every 60 years. These are all put together around 2,000 years ago. So it's like this has been happening for the 60 years since then. That's a lot of 60s. I don't know who has that quick math. I didn't do it. Yeah, I think that's what I got. And then I'll tell you guys a little about feng shui in a minute.
She's coming back. She's coming back. I know, I always feel the same way with Emaline. I'm always amazed by how good a speaker she is. I speak very differently. I won't say that I'm not a good speaker. I think I do a good job, but I'm very roundabout, and I find my way into the circle eventually. But Emaline is just so on point. It's just really a gift. It's beautiful to watch. Yeah, admirable qualities. So, yeah, I just want to basically piggyback on what she's saying with a little bit of a different perspective and kind of go a little bit deeper into the energetics of the year as well. And basically, I'll be going over. We talked about a hexagram. I don't know if anyone got the email, but about a hexagram being one of the keys to sort of navigating this year. And so I want to talk about that hexagram and where that comes from and what that means and the levels of it, and to give some sort of specific advice for what we can expect and where we want to align our energies, where we want to put our energies for this year. The idea there is just congruence. The Chinese love the flow, going with the flow. It's with the flow or against the flow. And when you're counterflow, like when you're walking back up against a stream and that water's hitting you and then it's like splashing all around you, the stuff that splashes around you, the Chinese referred to as xie qi, which means pathogenic qi. It's stuff that's counterflow, and it can be toxicity, like chemicals are a big type of xie qi, pesticides, things like that in our foods sometimes. Those can be big xie qi that we take on. But it's stuff that's a little bit against the flow of nature. Those create things that our body doesn't integrate as easily. And so when we talk about the patterns of the year's energetic, what we're basically trying to dial into mentally is how can we act in more with the flow of this year's energy. So on a year that the flow is to go inward, if we do a lot of pushing forward and making new projects, that theoretically is going to create a lot of counterflow, a lot of that xie qi sort of after effects. Like it will probably throw off some, scatter some shrapnel or whatever it is in the wake of us pushing forward against the flow. So this is very important, going way back in the Chinese approach to life, which is a farmer way to approach life, which they are living with the land at the time that all this is written, and the symbols are coming from the land. It's all nature-based, and it's about how can we be in most congruence with the land, and that there are patterns in the stars in the sky above us, and they shift. And as the constellations shift, so too do the very subtle vibrations that are coming down, radiating through us, and we're always feeling, and those vibrations are always shifting, but it's just whether we are attuned to them or not, and whether we are acting in kind of harmony with them, or whether we're creating dissonance in our actions and what we're putting out in the world. And we all know that happens, right? We all know that feeling of sometimes we're just trying to get something done and it just feels so against the flow, and it's just hitting block after block after block. And then sometimes we just give up, and then inevitably it happens after we give up. There's those things that there's sometimes alignment. If we can get ahead of it, if we can have an idea of what to expect, it just gives us another piece of information as we can sort of navigate the year. So that's more what I'm going to be talking about. And then Emeline's going to do a little bit of feng shui, and the feng shui is that put into the physical environment. The feng shui is setting your physical environment up in accordance vibrationally with what we're getting from the heavens and what we're getting from the earth and the seasonality of the earth. So if you kind of line up your feng shui, it sets your container, it sets your space. And then if you line up your actions and your intentions in the world, then that lines you up psychically, energetically with vibration. That's the idea, is you're doing that every year, and you're doing that throughout the year to kind of really make sure that you are staying. This is the pattern. This is the direction of achieving a healthful way of life, is patterning yourself on the patterns of nature. It's regulating yourself with the patterns of nature. And then after that, we're going to actually play the musical notes, and people that have been here many times. Who's been to every single Chinese New Year that we've done?
We've had
Oh my gosh.
12.
You guys are amazing. Yeah.
Since the rabbit left.
Oh, since a rabbit.
Yes.
Yeah, we started on the rabbit.
With the rabbit.
Did we start on the rabbit?
Did it?
I
In
think there may have
2010?
been one before.
2010 would have been a dragon, right? No. 2012 was a dragon. Rabbit. We started on tiger, I think.
I
Is that true?
didn't know, I didn't go to that one.
Okay.
This
I
one.
guess.
Maybe we didn't. I'm
I
open.
guess it was. We
Anyway.
digress.
Yeah, we digress.
Come back to
Still amazing.
It was February.
Still amazing. So every year we play these notes, and this is one of my favorite things to do. Do you mind closing that door? I'm so sorry. It's one of my favorite things to do because you can we'll talk about it as we get into it, but we can actually play the vibrational sort of tunes that should be coming through from the constellations into our reality here, and they'll be on like sub audible levels, but there's still these frequencies, these vibrations that are playing, like the Schumann resonance, that sort of stuff, but like the ones that are coming as the constellations change. The stars literally play sounds coming through the universe. So we're going to play some of those and see what they're going to sound like this year according to the pivoting of the constellations. Okay, so that was all preamble. Now I'm ready to start the talk. You see, we're very different. Emaline would have been done by now. Okay, she'll remind me of that too. Okay, so the Guimao, we said the Yin Water Rabbit, the 40th year of the 6-year cycle. And then we did say it's Yin Water, we did say it's a rabbit. What we haven't said yet is it's also a deficient fire year. And that's actually the main energy. There's always this hidden energy. It gets way too complex, way too fast, so we're not going to spend time talking about all those complexities, but the main overriding energy of this year is fire, and it's a deficient fire. So we've got the water energy coming up with a deficient fire energy on top of the rabbit, which is also an eastern wood energy, but we'll talk about it. So, but overall, you can think of this year as a softer year than 2022. So last year was Ren water, which is yang water, like a rushing river. It's that kind of energy. And it was also a tiger year, which is also that kind of energy. So you had this rushing water, tiger, like sort of energy. So it's a very strong year. A lot of power, a lot of movement, a lot of change. This year is the time where all of that starts to clear, and we get time. This is where we get time to attend to our wounds, basically. This is our time to heal. So after this big year where there's a lot of change, a lot of tumultuous things, a lot of stuff happening, now the energy of this year, if you remember one thing from today, from my vantage point at least, if you remember, just remember this is the year we should pull back and work on healing, because we all have things to work on. and this is the year to do it, where we're going to work on ourselves, where we're going to work on healing. That's the energy is going to be inward. Next year, don't worry, next year is going to be a young wood, like a big tall redwood tree growing upward, and a dragon year, like lots of movement, lots of power, a lot of stuff coming next year too. So take the opportunity of this year. We should, theoretically, there should be more opportunities this year created for us to find peaceful moments in our lives, for us to find respite, for us to find areas where we can just take a break, regroup, that sort of thing. We should find that this year. Next year, again, things are going to start moving, so take it while it's here. If we start pushing this year, which is going to be against the flow, so it's just, typically, you won't be able to sprout amazing things as well as you could. You're not going to blossom these new projects and new things in life as well as you probably could in some other years. So your energy is really going to be best spent directed a little bit more inward. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's where I was also saying, I said in one of those emails, as kind of just as a sort of intro to what we were talking about, that's where I was saying, like, this is the year to start working on trauma. This is the year to start working on, well, you can start anytime, but to really dive into working on trauma, to really dive into working on addictions, compulsions, voices that we don't attend to, that we haven't been attending to, that have maybe been there for a while, and we're just kind of letting that voice keep saying stuff to us, and we just keep kind of feeling victim to it, or we keep getting in that way of like, okay, well, it was just there, so I had to do this. And, those things that sort of drive us in our reptilian brain. And this is the year where we want to start really parsing that out and saying, what are all these voices? And getting into how can we take this reptilian brain sort of stuff, and how can we start that evolutionary process of engaging our higher brain with what's happening there. And that starts by identifying, we'll go through it, but it starts by identifying what the voice is, why it's there, what its purpose is, and what it's saying to you, and what it really wants, what it's really there to do, and then talking to it from our higher level of what do we actually want, and then engaging that voice, as opposed to just these voices that say, like, oh, eat chocolate, eat chocolate, eat chocolate, eat chocolate, chocolate. And so we're just like, oh man, there's just all this chocolate there. What was I going to do? And they say 2023 on them, and it was a New Year's thing. They're so pretty. I'm just going to take a few home too, and it's just like saying eat chocolate. It's engaging those sorts of voices that kind of compel us to do things that then maybe we have a stomach ache, maybe we feel bad later, or maybe we feel bad because we were trying not to eat chocolate and we'd gone like 3 days, but it was like a New Year's thing or something like that. Though that's the stuff we want to start working on. Stuff like that. This is the year to do it. The energy is going to be with you there. To take those things that are like this reptilian brain telling you to do something, and to take it from that unconscious place where it's driving you underneath the surface, and to take that to the level where you are starting to say, okay, what's that? Why is this voice saying I want chocolate? Who is this voice? I identify it, okay, what do you really want, voice? And maybe that voice is a voice that's trying to protect you, or is saying like, hey, you've been working way too hard, like you haven't had a break in a long time, you've been way too hard on yourself. It's a voice that's trying to do that. And then you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Well, chocolate doesn't really fit in with my plan at this point, because I know I'm going to feel bad if I eat that. What I can do for you is I could take a 30 minutes and I could watch a really funny show, and I could kick my feet up and I could just do nothing, or I could go relax. And tell you what, I could even do that every day. I can make sure that I make time to dance a little bit, or to watch something that's really funny, or to do something that makes me laugh, something where I'm not overstressed, where I'm not working all the time, where I'm not doing all this sort of stuff. And then you see what that starts to do with your psyche, because that voice doesn't really care about chocolate. It cares about like some driven need underneath the surface for you to do self-care. And it's like doing your self-care by making you eat chocolate. You've got a higher level thinking, right? That's saying, no, that's not what I'm looking for. That's not actually my path. But if you don't make that voice conscious, then it's just always driving you under the surface. So this is the exact kind of work that you want to be focusing on this year. Looking at those voices in your head and trying to figure out what they're actually after, and then taking the discussion into your higher brain, into a higher brain level. No matter what it is. I mean, some people don't have chocolate things or food things. It could be about, exercise. It could be about work, like we said. It could be about, a way that you act in public, or, I don't know, shame things. It can be millions of things. You get the point, though, right? Is that an okay example generally to understand what I'm talking about? So the process of taking the unconscious and making it conscious, but doing that internally. Doing that physically with our mental work in ourselves. That's where the energy is for this year. Tiger, this is last year, this year's rabbit, healing wounds. Oh yeah, and then we're going inward. We're healing our wounds. So be careful as you're doing this. Just side note, I will have this all. We'll have this all written down, and we will be sending an email out as well. And you'll have a link to the recording too. But we'll have an email with everything in it, so you can. If I talk too fast, like you'll get another chance at it. So as we're doing that, we want to make sure that we don't feel sorry for ourselves, though. This isn't about feeling sorry for ourselves. This isn't about feeling victimized by ourselves or by society and the constant marketing, that all that sort of stuff. This is about transitioning that feeling of weakness. Whenever a feeling of weakness comes up, this is the big energy in this year, and this is going to be in the hexagram that we'll see. But the feeling that an addiction makes, or a compulsion, or some bad habits, or whatever it is going on inside us, or a trauma, or a past trauma that we're still dealing with, those things can bring you to a place where you feel kind of weak to it, where you feel a weakness to it. So this is the year where we're going to take that weakness and we want to change our perspective on it, where we don't want to feel about it like we don't want to feel the weakness about it. We want to change to the perspective, hey Reba, that we're not feeling sorry for ourselves, but rather we're feeling empowered by the strength that it takes to do self-care, to do the work that we're doing. We want to feel empowered by that. So we want to feel strengthened by it. We want to feel like we want to feel our own, the strength is always there. So we can either have our lens and our lighthouse on the focus of feeling weak with it, or we can shine that light on the positive attributes and what we are doing that takes a lot of strength to do. And that's where we want to get. So we're going to take any weakness feelings, we're going to try to bring them up into a feeling of actually materializing the strength, and then we're going to get a lot of unconditional love going about that, which will be really fun. Okay, so yin water, like the soft dew on a plant. Emaline was saying the yin water in general, it's just the softer year, it's nurturing, it's nutritive. It's like that soft dew right before the dawn, at the end of night. It's also emotions this year. It's the yin water, it's emotions. It's like there's this big analogy of the clouds that come through, and we think we're in a really bright, clear day and everything's going really well, and then this cloud comes through and all of a sudden the sun is just totally obstructed, and we feel disconnected, and we're like, crap, what happened? I was just doing so good, and now I don't even know what I was doing. I feel, and you just start to feel like everything just changes like that. And then, that cloud just keeps on drifting, and eventually it goes away again, and you're like, yeah, no, I got this. I'm clear. But that's kind of the way emotions work. It's hormonal way too, right? As things come into our system and then they move out slowly over time. So it's this sort of drifting clouds. That's this yin water energy. It's like clouds and mist. It can be like storms that come through and rage all of a sudden and then evaporate and move on. And then there's always this period, right, after the storm where things have been really shook up and everything's really electrically charged, and we've got this chance after a big storm. There's this big chance and this big opportunity to heal and to attend to something really that you couldn't see before, even because it shook everything up and it separated everything, and there's a clarity in the sky. When there's that electromagnetic charge, there's this clarity around everything. You can hear better, you can see better, and you have this opportunity to deal with a deeper injury, a deeper wound. Does that make sense? Rabbit year, the rabbit, also one thing to add to the rabbit was the rabbit's really concerned about future generations. That's the focus of a rabbit, right? The propagation, sort of reproductive cycle of a rabbit, that whole idea. But the energy of a rabbit is concerned about future generations. And that's why we do this work on ourselves. It's not, and I'm not just saying like if you have kids, future generations. This is the consciousness. Like we are all part of the evolution of consciousness that's happening in the world. People here more than a lot of other people sometimes, probably, because we've got a lot of light workers in this room who are really moving it forward. But we are all part of the consciousness evolution transformation in the world. So being a part of that this year, doing that inner work is what helps move consciousness forward. Consciousness literally is a thing, like, and it moves forward by dipping down, like taking a ladle into the soup and bringing it up. It moves forward by taking the gunk in the unconscious and figuring out how to bring it into this conscious light and really bringing clarity to it and bringing higher level function to it. And just doing that process in ourselves over and over makes ourselves like a big air purifier that you set in a room. And then everybody around you is like breathing better air. Everybody around you is breathing better consciousness because you are doing this purification work. It affects everything. That's all. Oh, the rabbit also, it doesn't, is it funny every time I say rabbit, do you like look up? Yeah. Sorry. So his nickname is Rabbit. The rabbit also doesn't take giant leaps. It takes smaller over and over steps. So this is, remember that with this year, this, again, like I was saying, not a big leap year as much. It's more of a do step by step. Look for the one step that's going to help take you to the next step, and then just keep going step by step. Keep it kind of smaller. Slow down. Focus on the strategies that you are employing in your life. We're all employing strategies in our life that are giving us the results that we are getting right now. And so slow down. Look at the results you're getting. Are they the results you want? Are they not? Are they not the results that you want? What strategy are you employing? Like, what are you doing right now that is creating what's happening in your life? And look at that strategy, start to break it apart. This is where we're becoming conscious of things that are a little bit unconscious. Because we're all using strategies to get outcomes in our lives. It's just whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously. So this is the year about looking at those strategies, figuring out what they are, and then doing it on purpose. Dragon year next year, lots of energetic movement. So I've mostly talked about, I weaved in a lot of the stuff about the hexagram. The hexagram that we're talking about, hexagram 37, is called the family. The Yijing, in general, for those that don't know, just real quick overview primer, it's an ancient wisdom text. It's one of the most, it's looked at as one of the most important, influential texts in at least Asian culture, but a lot of people look at it as one of the most influential world texts. And it is a series of symbols. The whole text is written to basically create a symbolic picture of the patterns of life. All the different sort of patterns and transformations that happen in life. And they represent it through 64 hexagrams, which are straight line, 6 straight lines stacked on top of each other. And there's 2 kinds, so it's binary code. It's zeros and ones. And there's 64 different combinations of those zeros and ones that are all individual combinations. That's how many you can do. That if you have a 0 and a 1, you can do 64 different combinations, completely unique combinations. Then they take it, so you have 64, and then they take it and you have, and those represent big patterns or moments in life, a time in life, something that you may be going through. You know, it represents an archetypal kind of pattern. But then it's not just 64, because then you always have a changing line in each one of them. So you have 6 chances at a changing line. And when you end up doing the math, there's 384 different lines, 64 hexagrams. So when you do the math, there's 4,096 different possible readings that you can get for any sort of thing that you're doing. And that gives you a more archetypal sort of image, symbolic representation of the time period you're going through, whatever's happening in your life. Very, very soaked in wisdom. It's just like, it's a very wet text, meaning it's just very like in the unconscious, and it helps bring you out of these like deep places, like multiple layers down of what's happening in a situation where you think it's about this, or it's about this small argument that you had, or it's about this kind of thing. But it's like, oh no, this is about boom, down here, soul level. This is about, this kind of transformation thing happening. And so it cues you into those things. It brings you into this sort of inner work level. It'd be a nice year to start using that if you want. It's pretty easy. You just buy an Yijing, and when you want to get a reading about something, you just open it up to a random page. And then that could theoretically be your reading about something. And you can be like, what is the energy going on right now? And you just open it up. And you just start reading. And just see what you get from that. That's the simplest, dirtiest way to get into it, but it really works. So the hexagram for this year, I threw the Yijing for this year, meaning to get a divination. It's not a fortune-telling thing as much as it's about telling you the patterns of what's happening in life. It's just patterns over and over repeat themselves in our lives. They just look slightly different, so we don't recognize them as the same pattern. But the same underlying patterns repeat over and over. And some of those patterns repeat a lot more than others. We all have some core patterns too that repeat a lot in many different facets of our life. And that's what we're always looking for in therapy and that sort of stuff. We're always looking for what's that core pattern? The Yijing can help you kind of cue you into it. But the hexagram, so I threw for this year, and the hexagram I got was number 37, which is about family. And funny enough, that is also, there's ways of lining the hexagrams up with every year also, and the hexagram for this year, in one of those ways of doing it, is family. It's the same hexagram, and I threw it and I got that hexagram as the guidance for this year. And that kind of synchronicity happens all the time in the Yijing. That's you kind of learn to expect that sort of synchronicity as well. It's pretty amazing. But so with the idea of family, I'm just going to weave in what we've been talking about. It's an image. The hexagram itself is an image of fire with wind above it. That's the nature image. And so the idea there is that when you tend to your fire, when you really get this fire going, it creates movement. So that tells us a lot. That this year the pattern is tending to our inner fire. It's tending inside ourselves to what is driving us inside, what's inspiring us inside, what's motivating us inside, what is giving us our animation inside. It's attending to that. And when we attend to that, instead of trying to do outside things, instead of looking for external solutions, tend to the inner stuff. Start really tending that fire, and then it naturally creates movement that's more external movement. Then external movement will happen naturally. Our focus should be on our own internal fire, stoking that, working with that, managing it, all that sort of stuff. Does that make sense? Probably. Okay, so the family is a really beautiful image of the importance of doing our inner work, right? So we all have family systems, and family systems are great at inspiring us to do work to cultivate patience and tolerance and love and unconditional love and non-judgment, and all these things get developed through family work, right? And the more that we do our inner work, and the more that we cultivate ourself into that consciousness purifier, the more that affects our family. So even if we're not talking to our family, even if we're not around them, this is the family constellation work that Mary Frank does, and Hunter does, and Jesse does, and which is beautiful work, but it's about us becoming our own consciousness purifier. I've just coined that term in the moment here today, so yeah. But it's about turning ourselves into that, and even if we're not around our family, it still starts working on them, and it really, really does, and it can make changes very quick. But the family is a really beautiful image of the importance of doing your inner work, because what happens in a family? If you're in a family and all you do is attend to your external life, what happens in that time to the family dynamic? The breakdowns that happen if you aren't focused on this tribe, on this sort of thing of what's happening here, on your inner work, on your being present in this unit. what happens is it starts to break down. If your focus is on the external world, if your focus is on the family, unless it's already strong, unless it's already been super strengthened to the point that you can kind of ignore it and move your focus away, it's going to start to break down. And that happens a lot. So the family is a beautiful image of the importance of staying in the process, working with the internal stuff. It's not just the family, like our tribal family unit. We all have the family inside ourselves, which is what I was referring to earlier with all the voices. That's our internal family. So we unto ourselves are our own family, like inside our heads. There's a very large family in there. So, some larger than others. But all those voices. And so what we have to do is we don't want all those voices like coming in and being like, boom, I control it now, let's go party. And it's like, boom, I control it now. No, we are studying. Or, we don't, that's contentious family, right? So if we're trying to create a harmonious family inside our minds, what it's going to look like more is engaging our higher level thinking function, which is our sort of parent figure function, but our higher level thinking function, to say, okay, I hear you, but this is what I'm going to do, and I think what you're really after is this. And doing that over and over and over, and sculpting our lives to create space so that those voices aren't always complaining for things or shouting for things or doing them, because they're probably doing that for a reason. We are probably not in a balanced place. Our strategy is probably not balanced enough in the different directions, because those voices are coming in and they're trying to upset the balance that's happening. They're trying to bring something else in. So attending to voices of the family inside ourselves. And then ultimately, there's a beautiful quote here, and if anybody ever wants to get this book, it's called The Gene Keys, and it's a gorgeous book. Do you know it, Claire? Yeah. Oh, did we talk about it? No, you just know it. Yeah. Good for you. And Nancy, yes. So The Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. It's like a super tapped in version of the Yijing. And he expands on all the hexagram. He writes it, you wouldn't even know it's necessarily about the Yijing the way he writes it. You have to just know that it's about the Yijing. But he writes about each of the 64 patterns, and he writes about them all as in terms of the DNA and the different proteins and amino acids, and literally a very physical representation, biomedical representation of what's happening. That the Yijing was also describing these very physical processes that are happening, and that it's ultimately describing, because what Yijing literally means, Jing is book, Yi literally means change. It's a picture of a chameleon. It's the book of changes. And so he's saying, and it's beautiful the way he positions it all, that the Yijing ultimately is showing how the evolution of our consciousness is happening and playing out, and how we can be active participants in evolving the consciousness of the universe. It's gorgeous. So check that one out if you want something. You can just read it straight through. It's just filled with wisdom. That's a beautiful one to just open up to a page when you need something, or you're like, what's happening right now? And you just open it up. That one's really dialed in. But he says, this is one of his quotes about that hexagram, the family. Those who thrust themselves to the top of the hierarchy through brute strength and subversion are losing their power. And those who hold a vision of synthesis based on self-transcendence are gaining more power. In this way, the world is transforming. So there is a transfer of power from the model of subversion and brute force and dominance. There's a transfer of power to the higher consciousness of synthesis, of bringing things together, and self-transcendence. This correlates with that idea of God falling, where it's not meaning that that's a bad thing, and Larry could talk about this forever, but I probably could too. but the idea that that God is actually coming into embodiment. So there's this transfer in a collective manner from a place. This is where I get nervous talking in front of Larry, who's like, this is he's bishop, and he knows all of this. Anyway, but I'm going to just say it. You can interject or throw a tomato if you need to. So there's this transfer from this idea, the weakness again, right? So there's one way where here's God, or here's the universe, here's this higher power, and we are weak in the face of it. We are mere mortals. We are we have this flesh that just brings shame to us. That's this, right? There's that kind of older interaction versus this God falling idea where we're stopping. There's this movement to stop putting God way up here and us way down here, and to start bringing God closer down to earth, where we start to feel the embodiment that God is in us, the power, the power of the universe, the power that animates us is that oneness, is that larger oneness, and it's inside of us. So that idea that we can lift our heads and we can actually be there in the presence of that oneness, and we can feel it inside ourselves, and we can feel that's the movement from weakness to equality, and not, and that's a hard one to sort of say, but it's the idea that we are empowered, and that we are, so it's bringing it in. So this is the same sort of, this is this idea that that's a big consciousness shift happening in the world that is actually symbolized by the hexagram of family, because the real family is not our tribal unit, and it's not just the family inside ourselves, but the real family is all of us, is everyone, is the world, is the all life. So this is big stuff. This is the movement from our little selves and from our tribal units to this giant leap of consciousness of all one family. So that's our work this year. Yeah?
Easy peasy.
Is that okay?
The only thing I
Yeah, go for it.
is once we bring that into us, the great oneness or divine or whatever you call it, we find out it's already been there forever.
Yeah.
We come into the world with it.
Yeah. Yep.
It's part of our natural being. But the churches and other things have pushed it away from us. So it's our
Right.
job to know that it's already there.
Yeah. Our job to know that it was already there. Microphone just off. As we bring it back down. Thank you. Okay, and you talked about the fire. Okay, so I'm going to move that into something a little bit more rote, and this is very quick, so we're coming out into a different level. But there are some physical things that can happen and go along with this year. Mainly around, the Chinese would say around dizziness, forgetfulness, sadness, pain in the blood vessels is one of the things. A little cold in the heart or constriction of the vessels. So we want to do a lot of vessel work. It's the deficient fire year, so it's a blood vessel sort of issue year. So we want to do any work to strengthen our blood vessels. If we're looking at cholesterol, if we're looking at plaque and stuff like that, we want to do the things that we need to do this year. It's a good year to work on that. The wind will be in your sails to work on healthy cardiovascular system. Pull back, it's the inward energy, withdraw, rest, integrate, come up with new plans. You can hide away from others and come up with your own new plans. You can do that. You have full permission to do that. It's going to be very supportive to do that. And the body's going to give you feedback. So the health things are your body giving you feedback that you're overextending or you're pushing out too much or whatever it is. So listen to body signs as feedback. And then your internal practices, meditation, qigong, yoga, prayer, the practices that keep you dialed in. I just got these beautiful, they're called Now. Have you all seen those? Now, they're sound speakers. And you just press them and it plays 3 minutes of these chimes. But they were like 3 minutes, and it does the same brainwave manipulation as 20 minutes of meditation. And it really does. Like, I was surprised, but I was like, okay, I'll bite. But it's so nice. So doing that a few times a day, just for 3 minutes, and you just like get into a really nice zoned in place. It just bring the practices that keep bringing us back and bringing us into center. And then the regular eating and sleeping patterns would be really helpful. This is a good year for that, to try to regulate the eating and sleeping patterns, like regular-ish times, regular-ish amounts, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Cultivate love and compassion for yourself and others, and then emerge next year refreshed and strong. Okay. And I'll be back in a minute to do the musical notes, and we'll end with that. But first, we need to hear a little bit about the feng shui of the year from Emaline. You guys are doing great staying with us. Is this too much or okay?
We're 5 minutes out, so
5 minutes out.
mine is 1.2 minutes. Are you guys cooked? Or you want more? Okay. All right. What's funny about the feng shui is it's about the most boring thing ever to talk about, because I'm actually not going to say all the specifics, but I can put some in an email if people are. Is anyone actually interested? I see a hand. Okay. And then it's all pretty Chinesey, so not that that's no thought about that one way or the other. But the only thing is, like, most of you probably don't have a like Tai Sui card, these kind of things. You have no idea what I'm saying. So I'm trying to think too of like more like having flowers or stones or things that are more in our home and world here to put for enhancers and neutralizers. And maybe you don't even know what I'm talking about. So feng shui is, so let me just step back and say, feng shui, so feng is wind and shui is water. That's what those words mean. So it's the study of wind and water. It's the study of how the energy flows over space. That's why you hear so much about people feng shuiing their homes or physical spaces. In China, it is just common practice to your business, your house, all of that stuff. Like, of course, I don't know what we have that's of course like that, but maybe how you landscape your yard or something. Just things that people do for sure all the time. They even choose their burial sites based on feng shui and your astrology. All of that is very common practice because it's the same thing that we just keep talking about, having the wind in your sails. Like, we're talking all of this about the Yin Rabbit year, explain what the year is about, so that you can have that wind in your sails, and work with the year instead of working against the year. We all know what that feels like, right? So with feng shui, it's just working with the energy of the year instead of against it. Then things will be much easier for you, basically. So there are 9 directions, including the center. So there's always about 4 or 5 favorable and 4 or 5 kind of unfavorable directions of the year. The very kind of like least favorable this one, this year is the northwest. So you can, if you don't know, you can, take your compass and find the northwest area of your home. But there's always one direction that's like, that's the bad one. So in general, you want to like keep it quiet and not slam doors. You don't want to activate it at all. In our home, that's our kitchen, where I spend like half of my time. So inevitably it will be in high activity spots, and that's when you then place kind of neutralizers. We do have an exterior door in our kitchen, so it's like, we're going to try not to slam the door. I'm going to put like a 6-rod chime outside the door. There's like things, you like put a white decoration beside the stove. So all of this stuff will help. And then I've literally been brainstorming like, how can I be more quiet in the kitchen? I'm not sure. You shouldn't sleep in the northwest, this kind of stuff. So it's northwest and then west a little bit. West is this year a little tricky. It's in the favorable direction. So for this year, the kind of more favorable directions are south. That is the absolute most favorable. So hang out in the south, put fresh flowers in there, like make that your place this year. Do all your inner work art in there. Our kids' playroom, it's like our kids' playroom in our closet. So I'm also trying to think like, what are we going to be? I'm going to hang out in the closet a bunch this year. Anyone wants to come over and have closet tea, this is the year for it in the south of our house. So south, southwest, center, west, and north are all the positive areas this year where like beneficial energies will be. So in general, you want to activate those areas. The unfavorable ones are the northwest, that's the most. East, that's the sickness area for this year. So that's, I always try to put like a little medicine Buddha and, you know, things that make you feel well, because it's no fun to be sick. And just like Joseph was saying, this year especially, our body will tell us when we're overdoing it, because this is a very easy year. Just because it's modern life, it will be easy to start going outward, and then your body will be like, and there's the flu, or like, you're going to stub your toe, and you're like, oh, right, it's an inward year. I'm going to stop doing that. So, and then also placing something in the east with the sickness area would be helpful. And I will put this in an email with more specifics, as a couple people are interested. Also, southeast and northeast are unfavorable. The west is tricky this year. It's in a favorable direction, and then it has this super unfavorable energy on it. So I'm figuring that one out. But that as well, that and the northwest are areas to like keep quiet and not slam doors. Don't have your drumming party in there this year. You all can also Google feng shui for this year. It's like a crazy wild world, but it's really fun. I also have found these cards on Etsy. Maybe I'll put the site in the email, but it's really cool. So someone makes up, they look very lovely. They're like this big, and they have all the different directions on them for the year. And just like printed on the back are kind of cures or enhancers. And you can just place those in the directions of your house. So if you don't have any of the extra stuff, like little card, you know, just using the cards and putting them in directions of your house helps. So we've been doing that for the last few years in the clinic and at our house. And then every month there's a different one that moves. And I've really liked that. That's been really helpful. And you kind of think, what does any of it matter? You don't have to do it if you've never done it your whole life. Maybe what does it matter? But I do find it actually matters. You can, you know, like literally I'll forget to move our cards because there's smaller ones that move every month. I'll just forget, and like 2 weeks pass, and all of a sudden we're all sick and like stuff's not working, and I like broke a pot, and you know, and you're just like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, I forgot to move the cards. So then I like move them and it gets better. Has that ever happened to you, Ashley? Ashley moves the cards in the clinic.
Literally at the clinic, me and Claire we'll be like, what is going on? Everything's out of whack.
Right.
Oh, we need to move the cards are out.
Yeah, and then what happens once you do?
And then everything's like,
Right. So, and same thing, like all of this information we're giving to you is from these texts 2,000 years ago. Feng Shui is the same. That's what's so an amazing thing about Chinese culture is this work, like Chinese medicine and the philosophy in Feng Shui, has been actively in practice for thousands of years. I mean, it's hard to truly conceive of, you know, and refined, and it works. So is this year more of a year to work inward or outward? Good. Yes, and I want to say just two other little helpful things for this year. So there's a lot of the wood energy, which is the rabbit in the east that we talked about. There's a lot of the water energy. It's literally in water. This year is planting a seed. That's what wood is. It's a seed. It's literally plants, right? And it's naturally being watered because there's the in water. So whatever seeds you plant this year, which should all come from inner observation and inner work, is what's going to grow up. Not just next year, but over this next 12-year cycle. But it will naturally grow up because next year is a yang wood year. The redwood tree, like that stuff's going to sprout. And then the dragon's going to like blow it everywhere. So be extra mindful. Vision board, be conscious. Do the artist way class, you know. This is all that. And then The two kind of extra things I want to add that are helpful for this year that are not naturally present this year are metal and earth qualities. Those just aren't as present, those elements. So metal is more of the quality of, like Joe was saying, he didn't quite say routine, but it's kind of like that, like setting your food and setting your sleep. It's having structure and focus and discipline. And then because we know what this year is about, it's doing all that with ourselves. So that is very, very helpful for this year. And those are all kind of metal things. And then earth stuff, which is like being calm and still and grounded. So those two combined, and then you're being mindful and you're planting your seed and it's already watered, and then we're all just going to like explode into rays of light, I guess. Over the next 12 years, let's check back. And that doesn't mean you can't, I don't know, go on that boys' trip to Las Vegas or something, but you get the overall thing. And next year will be totally different. Next year's an out year. So, and I just want to leave you with my part, and then Joseph will do the notes, which is like incredible. My vision, my image of this year, we can imagine ourselves as the rabbit, and we're going on a journey. This year is very much about the journey, not the destination, not the end point. The end point's coming another year. We've got the windows down. We're cruising. We don't actually know where we're going. Maybe we're going on a country drive. We see someone that needs help, and we stop to help them along the way. We gather some like-minded, hearted souls to be with us, and that amplifies that. And that's it. That's what this year is. It's about the journey, that like relaxed cruising. We're helping others. We're just in it for the ride. And while we're driving, we're daydreaming of how to create our own heaven on earth.
Okay. So when the, do you mind shutting that door? Is that okay? Thank you, sir. When the Chinese in the older texts, when they were talking about medicine and talking about the body, they used agricultural terms like rivers and hills and mountains and holes and valleys and all that sort of stuff. And when they started talking about nature, they used nature terms. And when they started talking about the heavens, they used musical terms. They changed all their verbiage, and they only spoke about the way that the heavens worked, the constellations, the stars, in musical terms. And so it is outlined, and each season, there's 5 seasons, right, that we're going by, which is spring, and then there's summer and late summer, and fall and winter. So there's 5 seasons, and it's kind of a pentatonic scale. So the regular transformation of the seasons, the progression, would be spring, summer, late summer, fall, winter. So you can hear that. Can you hear this okay? Okay. Then this year, it's going to start with, there's a host and a guest energy. That's the host. This year, it starts with summer in the spring. If that makes sense. That's the host energy. So it's going to be a little bit different. It'll go like this. So the host make sense? So then there's a root note, which is through the whole year a G. Okay, so the sound of just these two together. And together. So we're going to do that one by one, and you can hear each season. So here's the root note through the whole year. And then this is going to be the energy of spring. So you can feel, is it harmonic? Does it feel good? Where do we feel it in our body? Or does it feel a little dissonant? That sort of thing. Okay. So here's spring. Spring. This will be summer. What do we think of those? It's okay? Everything's good so far, right? Okay. And then here's going to be... C, D. This is late summer. And here is fall. And then winter. Any of those stick out to anyone?
Late summer.
Late
and
summer?
Fall seem more ominous.
Uh-huh. Ominous, yeah.
Winter surprisingly sounds light.
Okay, here's the late summer again. Yeah, there's some ominousness there.
At least dramatic.
It is dramatic, yeah. And then fall. And winter. Okay. So we'll play, just play that whole progression once more as a progression. 5 notes, spring to winter. See if I can do it. Okay. Thank you all. Namaste. Okay, Go forth, light warriors. Thank you all so much for coming out and bringing this energy into this space. It's so helpful. Thank you. Oh.